all living in a world gone geek. It's time to geek hard or go home. The podcast is real. Here's your host, Grounded Geek.
Hey, everybody. Sunday night. It's time for The Podcast is Real, and we're grateful that you have decided to spend some time with us tonight. We have a great guest. We are going to still talking about writing. It's the month of November. If you're a NaNoWriMoer, is that a thing? This is your last couple days, right? So you're wrapping up, and hopefully you managed to make it through all of that. And congratulations if you did. But in celebration of NaNoWriMo all month, we've been talking to writers and self-publishers, people who are kind of doing this, and hopefully that will inspire people out there who are doing NaNoWriMo to publish on their own. And we've got a great guest tonight to talk about that. Before we get into that, though, of course, I got to bring out my good friends, Utah and Aaliyah. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Greetings, programs.
It is National French Toast Day.
What?
So I thought I would bring that up.
We shall toast in French, yes? That's not the French toast. Bonsoir, clink.
Is that, what does that mean?
That's not, that means good evening. That's not the kind of French toast day we're talking about, though.
No. So it leads me to question, what is your favorite breakfast dessert? Waffles? Pancakes? Because let's face it, these are desserts for breakfast, right?
That's not
waffles, pancakes, or French toast. If you had to pick one of the three, which one would you pick and why?
Ooh, that's tough, because I'm a big fan of, I guess it depends on how they're made, right? Because there's I liked a really thick, fluffy French toast with some cinnamon on it, and then you got the melted butter.
And apple and walnuts.
There you go. But there's something about the waffles because it has the syrup storage containers, so you can have more syrup with your waffle.
And you have to get it in all of them.
Well, right.
It has to be in all of them, or it's
otherwise
not a waffle.
it doesn't
count.
Then
you have to get a new waffle. So that's tough. It's hard.
You
to
didn't
be
mention
really
pancakes, though.
I did.
Well,
waffles, pancakes.
No, I was talking about you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mention pancakes. I feel like pancakes.
They must be third.
Yeah, I'd say they're close. They're really close together. But pancakes is the third. So I would probably go French toast, waffles, pancakes for me.
All right, Aaliyah.
I would go French toast, pancakes, waffles.
Flipping the flapjack there into the...
I am, and you know why? Because Jeff, I don't know how your West Virginian family is, but my West Virginian family, they make some bomb blueberry pancakes, and they're so fluffy, but buttery, and I don't know, just very sweet and delicious. So I have to say that but I personally love French toast more than I love pancakes.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Well, all right. So I see Jay is checking us out on Facebook. He's correct. Japanese pancakes are fantastic because they are.
So what is that? I don't know what makes it Japanese.
So in my experience, the easiest way to differentiate the Japanese pancake from typical pancakes is that they're always made super fluffy and light. So they're like a good, at least 1 inch, 2 inches thick, and they're just super soft and kind of melt in your mouth. And but that's just my experience. I mean, there's so many different pancake houses in Japan. I'm sure one of them's international even, but that's the big difference. The Japanese pancakes are usually smaller, but also much, much thicker.
Okay.
So we just changed the game.
Interesting.
So I mean, if we're sticking to kind of the typical American breakfast desserts, then I'll stick with my rankings. But the Japanese pancakes creep up big time because they're. I'm sure they're tough to make. I'm sure they're really difficult to make.
I love. Well, apparently Cheryl does not like making them for Jay. But, they are delicious. That's what he says.
Okay, well then we're all going to go to their house and have some Japanese pancakes.
There we go. Just we'll be over next. We'll do the show next Sunday from Jay's house.
From Jay and Cheryl's house. Yes.
So yeah, I like French toast. That's definitely my favorite because it's usually, like you said, it's got some cinnamon. It's usually got some flavoring in it, whereas the pancakes and waffles typically have the flavoring added after. It's what you put on them that makes them so good. But a French toast I mean, you could just put the syrup on there and I'd still be okay. And I'd also like a little powdered sugar. I like, mix it up, put some other things on there, but I love French toast. Gosh, after that though, it's probably really close for me between waffles and pancakes, but I'd probably go waffles because pancakes, I mean, it's got to be the right pancakes. I've had some pancakes that were pretty bland. You know what I mean? They're just like, I mean, really got to pour on the syrup and butter. You know what I mean? Whereas, typically a waffle, that I've had, like Belgian waffles. I think some of the best waffles I had were in Amsterdam. The Dutch, the pannen koken or something like that. I hope that means waffle and not something inappropriate that I just said. But yeah, so basically it is
don't
definitely
tell Cheryl.
Yeah. Oh, we should do a cooking stream at some point.
We definitely should. Yes.
Don't
put
tell
that
Cheryl.
on the list.
Hashtag don't tell Cheryl.
As long as she doesn't see this episode, she'll be okay. No, I love the waffles and then the pancakes. That's probably where I'd have to go. But yeah, there were some really interesting pancakes, and they're like called Dutch pancakes, and they put like it's not. They put like all kinds of different stuff. Like it is really a dessert. The ones that I had there, I literally had one. I had one for dinner one night because I was like, I gotta have one of these before I leave Amsterdam. And I went into this like little kind of side of the building diner that made them. It was really
hole
cool.
In the wall.
Yeah, but it was like highly recommended. Like this is the place to go or whatever. And
that's where you get the best food, or the hole in the walls.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
Really.
Well, and I mean, it's not like over there was a ton of like these chain restaurants, all over the place serving pancakes. They're all in these like traditional, little restaurants. And so I went in there and had one. It was really good. I forget what they'd put all kinds of stuff on it. They just piled this thing high. The pancake itself was super thin. It was it was Amsterdam, but it was super thin, and but then it had like there was fruit and whipped cream and like it was just buried in like yummy things. So it was really good. So if you do that, then pancake. I mean, but then if you pile it high enough, foundation, it doesn't really matter what's underneath it, right? It could be French toast or a waffle. I wouldn't even know.
Who knows what's down there?
The real question is, when did you go to Amsterdam and why?
So I went. It was
he doesn't remember.
Ago. It was right. It was the. It was this. It was in November. The November before the pandemic,
work, right?
Yeah, I go over there once a year for a conference. I help run all the tech and stuff for our European summit over there, and it was in Amsterdam. It's the only time. It's usually in Germany. This time it was in Amsterdam, so it was kind of cool. But yeah, definitely have the waffles if you're ever there. It's some good stuff. I had it twice. The other time I had it right outside the Anne Frank Museum or whatever it was.
That sounds like a happy time.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
Dude, it's not. I mean, obviously, it's sad, the whole thing, but it's fascinating to go through that house and just see all the all the stuff there. It's fascinating bit of history about it. It's just amazing that we captured the portrait of someone's real life during that. It's just crazy to think about.
Definitely a bucket list for sure.
Yeah. So it was interesting, but the waffles next door were great. Or not waffles, pancakes. The pancakes.
How do you leave the Anne Frank house and like say, "Oh, I'm hungry"?
No,
tell me.
I ate before. Oh my god! No, I went before. So it's kind of like the Van Gogh Museum here. You get your tickets and you have a window that you can get in, right?
Right.
And so I took like a bus to or a train. I can't remember which trip this was, and to nearby, and I walked, and it was all drizzly and rainy that day. And I still had like a half an hour before I could even like go in to get in line. So I was like, what am I going to do for a half hour? Oh, there's a pancake place right here.
You ate before. Gotcha.
Yes. That was how I killed the time before I was able to go in. And
tell me there's not a gift shop.
Well, yeah, I mean there is, but it's not trinkets.
It's all like historical stuff.
Oh yeah. It was. It's a little. I got a Anne Frank keychain and a
Anne Frank mug.
I don't remember what was there. That's funny that you mentioned that. I didn't even like think about it, but I mean, there were books and stuff like that, obviously. But
yeah, I'm assuming it was all
anyway.
appropriate stuff. That was,
But yeah, it was kind of a really, really sobering experience, but it's amazing to see. And it's like, this is where they live. All these people were crammed in this space. And when you get in there, it's mind blowing that people did that, and that they survived and they went that long, survived for that long in that house. I mean, obviously didn't survive, but you know what I'm saying? Like, her dad went on to, I think he's the only one that survived, wasn't he? I think that's what I remember hearing.
I think you're right.
But yeah, just really, really sad story, but fascinating to see the real place. All right. So on that note, happy French Toast Day.
Woohoo!
All right. So as I said before, we are continuing our series talking to authors this month. Before I do that, I do want to make sure everybody remembers that we are still giving away a Stadia Premier Edition, which is a really cool device. You can play really, Cyberpunk. You can play Far Cry 6. You can play like really, really high-end games through the cloud. And it's kind of awesome. It's also a Chromecast device. So even if you end up not playing a ton of games, you got a Chromecast device there in your TV and all that kind of fun stuff. So you could win one. You just need to go to the link in the show notes. And we'll make sure that one is underneath this video if you're watching it after the fact. But you'll need to go to that link. You'll need to like us on all of these different social medias to get as many entries as you can. And the drawing is next week. So this is your last week to get in on that drawing.
Utah.
And
I always forget.
We'll be drawing that next week on the show. So I'll be drawing it on Saturday. We'll be announcing it on Sunday.
I'm liking our podcast right now.
You better. Oh, man. But so this week, he is the author of two pretty fascinating series, The Driver and The Reeve. We're going to ask him a little bit more about those. He's going to explain the process. He's been both traditionally published and self-published, so he can talk to us a little bit about both. Please welcome to the show, Ian Lewis. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Yay. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
We are grateful for you to be here with us as well. Now, for those of you who are kind of joining us, you may if you followed us for some time, you've heard Matt Shigerick has been on our show. He's been on our game night show many times. He's a good friend of the podcast, and he and Ian both do the podcast Promptly Written, which is another thing I forgot to mention in your intro. So you also are a part of that podcast, which is
that is correct.
A podcaster in your own right. But dude, we appreciate you spending the time with us tonight. I had advertised last week that this was going to be about Promptly Written. Matt couldn't be with us, so he's got a family issue. So our thoughts and prayers go out to him. They will be joining us together. We'll join you guys. We'll meld you together into one.
Into me
being. On a future episode, we actually have been talking about doing a collaborative episode. So we'll have both of them on here. But for tonight, we get to talk all about Ian and all about your work. And so tell us a little bit about the books that you've written so far and what they're about.
Okay, I'll try to encapsulate it. For you.
Especially the series mainly.
Yeah, I don't strive for any particular genre per se. The Driver series is currently at 4 books, intended to be a 5-book series, and it's sort of an experimental fiction kind of an endeavor in the sense that each book's a little bit different with regard to format. But the content itself is more or less a mashup of like ghost story, murder mystery, rural noir kind of stuff where it's like small townish kind of vibe. And you have like a supernatural element to it where the protagonist is for all intents and purposes, a ghost. But I guess there's some very specific rules in this particular world how these people operate. It's everybody who's been murdered, basically. The idea is that your soul is split from your spirit, and then you're kind of stuck in this in-between state where you have to find your spirit or your ghost in the lingo of the book in order to kind of move on. And so the main character, the driver, is sort of stuck in this in-between state and is sort of tasked with gathering other murdered souls. And so, like I said, it's sort of experimental. It's kind of a sandbox for me to play in, try different things. The other series that's sort of on our radar right now is the Reeve, which is an alternate history that imagines a post-alchemy version of North America. And actually, the story takes place in sort of an alternate version of Northeast Ohio. And it's sort of Victorians, sort of like maybe quasi-colonial, but sort of a Victorian gas lamp, sort of low end of the fantasy spectrum. And I actually have a new book in that series, the second book, which is coming out December 20th, and that will also be a 5-book series when it's all said and done.
That's really cool. So tell me, when you started The Driver, then was it always going to be 5 books? Did you like how far along had you?
No, that's a good question. It started out as a really was meant to be a 1-book thing. It was very early on in my, I guess, serious writing endeavor. I started writing in college, wrote a bunch of garbage, didn't like what I was writing, set it aside, quit for probably 3 or 4 years. Then got the idea for the first book in the Driver series called The Camaro Murders. And I wrote that, got to the end and decided that, hey, I really like this character. Maybe I should keep him going. And so I said, well, let's keep writing. And I didn't really have a set end in mind, but the way it kind of plotted out, I'm doing, to finish the series, sort of like an in-series trilogy. And so the last book that I'll write for the Driver series will be sort of the third book in the in-series trilogy. So it certainly wasn't planned. It was all kind of organic, I guess you could say.
Now, how about with this newest one, the Reeves?
The Reeve series is a bit more meticulously plotted in the sense that there's some philosophical underpinnings to it that it's kind of laid out in a 5-book format for that reason. But it's kind of interesting because the series they have their similarities, but they're very different in another sense as well. So,
and how did you get started doing this? Now, you said you started in college, but have you always been interested in writing as a kid? Like, where was the inspiration come from?
So, interestingly enough, as a child, I like to draw a lot, and I always wanted to have, I think, a creative outlet in that sense. And as I got into high school, I just didn't draw as much anymore. I don't know why. I just kind of dropped it. But I always enjoyed reading, and I think all the creative urges sort of built up in college at some point where I was like, hey, I need an outlet, but I'm not really interested in drawing anymore. But because I like to read, I was like, well, maybe I should take a stab at writing, because it's pretty cheap thing to produce. There's not really a lot of overhead with that. So I started with short stories that, again, were not good. At least in my estimation, they were not good, and kind of went from there.
So where did you get the concept for the Reeve, and where did you get your concept for both of these novels?
So the Reeve there's a couple angles on it. So part of it was me just being maybe bored with my surroundings in the sense that, I was like probably driving to the grocery store on a Saturday morning or something, and obviously in Ohio, everything's in the winter and fall, it's pretty gray and gloomy. And I think I was wanting to reimagine my environment in a sense, thinking about what if there was an alternate reality or alternate version of my surroundings, what would that look like? And so my mind kind of went rampant with that. And there was also sort of the main character, the Reeve, is sort of, for better or worse, pretty tightly entwined with sort of the Batman mythos. There's a lot of similarities with him and that character. maybe too much, but it's too late. It's too late now. I'm already one book in, actually 2 books in now, but I didn't want it to be derivative, but like I'm a huge fan of sort of the Batman mythos, and so that kind of surfaced there, and so there was all that kind of going in my mind, and I was like, why don't I just write a story? Again, I don't know that I was necessarily dead set on a series at that point. I think I had sort of the ruminations of a series in my head, but was really the earliest germination of that idea was just, I want to look at my surroundings and imagine it in a sort of a fantastic way.
And what about for the driver? That one's very interesting to me. Like the concept of the driver is very intriguing. So I'm very interested in your concept ideation for that.
The driver it's funny. I go back and try to think all the time, where did that come from? It was a lot of things. Yeah, it was a lot of things out of left field. I think it was the most organic thing I've done in the sense that I didn't really have a strong plot or outline for it. But it was probably a couple things. Like, grew up watching Knight Rider. I love Knight Rider. And so you've got not a Trans Am, but a Camaro, which is still the F-body platform from GM, right?
Basically the same car.
Yeah, right. But it takes place in sort of like I said, a quasi-rural area, which where my parents are from this small little podunk town. So I grew up a lot around that type of an area. And I was listening to Coheed and Cambria a lot at the time, if you're familiar with that band.
Yeah.
But they do a lot of everything's sort of based on a story. They have some graphic novels that underpin each album, or at least most of the albums. And at the time, there was a lot of speculation amongst fans about, like, when you listen to the album, what part of the story you're listening to. And obviously each song can encapsulate every aspect of the plot. And so people were on message boards and forums trying to, like, piece it all together. And, like, to me, that was intriguing, where you have snippets or bits and pieces of insights into the story via the songs, but you're not really getting the whole story. And so the first book in the Driver series was sort of my attempt to evoke that response from a reader, where things are told not only out of order from a chronology point of view, but you get 4 different perspectives, one of them being from somebody who's dead. Mm-hmm. And so I was sort of trying to evoke that, hey, I get these snippets, like, let me use my imagination or my insight of what I do know to fill in the gaps of the rest, which is sort of plays into that experimental aspect of it, I guess.
So have you ever thought about using, like, your drawing capabilities and incorporating them into your novel?
So I don't know if my drawing capabilities exist anymore. I haven't. It's funny, 'cause my kids say, well, we're going to do drawing lessons, and I have to sit down and copy exactly what they're drawing, and they're always like, oh, you do it so much better than we do. I'm like, it's actually pretty terrible if you knew what I was doing here. But, like, I don't know. Like, I really like the idea of doing a graphic novel for the Driver series, and I kick around the idea of working with the artist who's done a number of my covers. Part of what deters me is I think it'll be really cost prohibitive, because you probably end up paying per panel, or maybe per page. I think it depends on whatever you negotiate with the artist. But the other part of it is, it would seem a little daunting to I'd probably have to storyboard everything out, which would be fun, but, like, at the same time, it's a little daunting. And so if I could I always have a pretty strong vision visually what I want to do, as far as a cover or what I have in mind when I write a book. And I really wish I had the talent to do that, to communicate it myself. And I don't know if I have that.
So since you mentioned the covers, I'll ask a question that kind of been on my mind. So obviously you said that you've hired an artist to do that. How did you, like, how does that come about? Like, how did you find the artist? How did you get connected with them? Because the covers the art is really good on it. It's really
the covers are nice.
To look at.
Thank you. Yeah. So when I first started out, I was with a small independent publisher, and they did I did 3 novellas with them. In those cases, they provided the artwork. And then when I went out on my own, I just sort of was Googling, and I can't even remember the sites now, but there's a number of sites where there's artists for hire and that kind of thing. And you just sort of look at their portfolio and see what they've done and try to find somebody that fits the vibe of what you have in mind. And it was just, I think, a matter of Googling, and I I hit him up on his website, and he just does, a per commission type pricing, and it kind of went from there. And you just communicate your vision to them, and you go back and forth. And
does he read the book? Like, do you have to, or do you just kind of give him an
I just
idea?
I just kind of give him a blurb, and he runs with it. So I've been pretty happy with what he's come up with.
That's pretty. And is it like digital art that he's doing, or is he like a painter, and then this is getting made into prints? Like, I'm just
Honestly,
curious
I
about the
don't
style.
know how he does it. I don't know what his method is.
Obviously, we need to have him on as a guest later, then, so we can find
Right?
out.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
He's pretty good.
But yeah, I think it's really, really interesting, and yeah, I think it would lend itself to a really cool graphic novel style too. I would love to see that.
Definitely would love to see that.
Yeah. So
Maybe I'll do it if I get some time. I'll get on it.
yeah.
Have your kids draw the panels.
Yeah,
for the novel. I mean, save some money, employ them, keep them busy.
They'd love that.
I think it would be nice, right? Because a lot of kids have like a very interesting way of showcasing their creativity. So if you allow them to read your novel and then just draw whatever comes to your first thing that comes to your mind, it might be some crazy thing, but I think it would be really interesting.
Yeah, it'll probably be full of poop emojis.
Yeah, we didn't ask how old his kids were. I mean, they're
not old enough yet.
Yeah. Are they old enough to read the novel even?
No, not quite.
Oh, I guess I should have asked that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe we should read the novels to them. We can make our own audiobook, and then they can draw from that. No?
There you go.
Maybe?
That's an idea.
Now, are these audiobooks? Do you have these published as audio?
I do not. So that's another thing that can be a little cost prohibitive. So to get like, if I had the right voice for it, which I don't, I would do it myself. But I think you need like that good narration radio kind of voice to do that kind of thing. But you either pay per word. I think it's per word. You pay somebody like up front, which if you pay someone to do that, it's going to be $2,000 or $3,000 maybe. Mm-hmm. Or you can arrange some type of royalty deal with the narrator.
Do the background sort of thing.
Yeah, generally they're only willing to do that if you're already sort of like a bestseller kind of an author. Which unfortunately I am not at that level yet. So I'd be looking at paying somebody up front, which is not cost effective right now. So.
So do you write these novels like just in your spare time, or do you allot time to write? Do you have any advice for fellow writers watching?
So I would say, me personally, I make time to write. And partially that's because I have a compulsion to write, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You sort of get it once you get an idea for a story, it moves beyond just the creative urge. You sort of have this inner world that kind of needs to get out, and you need to see it realized on paper. Even if no one else reads it, you just have this story that needs to get out. And so I would say if you're just starting out, probably it makes sense to make time to write, but probably not as necessary until you sort of get kind of possessed by an idea. So I usually write a little bit on my lunch break, and then usually a little bit in the evening after the kids go to bed. So any time I can get, I really try to do it.
I think that's a great question, because a lot of people who are aspiring writers, they have, a full-time day job. This is what we do. But then, how do you find the time for that creativity? Does you find that it's hard to get, like, I don't know about you, but I'm just speaking for my own, is I get in these creative, like, motivational periods. Like, it just kind of comes and it's like, oh, this is happening. This is going to happen right now. I got to write. This is got to, you know what I mean? Or I have to draw, or I have to do this, or I have to create this. Right. It is. No, that's actually a great example. It's like it's built up, and I'm like, the idea just starts formulating. A lot of times it'll be when I'm in the car and I've got these ideas flowing, and then I get home and it's like life starts happening, and we got to have dinner and the kids and doing this, and then and then by the time I get a chance to sit down, it's gone. The motivation. Yeah. Do you experience that? Is it easy for you to kind of like, okay, it's lunchtime, I'm getting into the writing mood now?
I think I used to have that issue. I used to keep a little notepad in the car for when I'd have those random ideas. And a lot of times it was something really abstract, but I knew that there was kind of something in there. And if I sat on it long enough, it might turn into something good. But it's weird. I don't know if my brain like has rewired itself, but I generally don't have that problem in the middle of the day. If something's interesting enough, it sticks with me. The problem I do have is when I have a really good idea when I'm dreaming, which a number of my stories ideas have come out of dreams. And I remember the other day, I was like half awake. It must have been the middle of the night. I was like, oh, this is a fantastic idea. Like for some reason, it's like, it really resonates in your head when you're half awake. I'm like, I got to remember that. And then of course I wake up and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that you say that. I remember I was a very avid daydreamer as a child, or, I would be awake. Obviously that's daydreaming and I know that, but I would create different scenarios in my brain of stories, or literally crafting up this entire world, so to speak, within my own brain. So I definitely resonate with the dreaming, ideation while you're dreaming. I think it's really cool, right? Because our dreams are, we don't think we realize that they're just dreams, but they can play a big part in our concept creation.
I've heard dreaming is it's been termed as like the birth or the origination of thought, basically, and like all your ideas or thoughts really come out of your dreams, which was an interesting thought to me.
That is an interesting thing to think about. Huh.
Yeah. So, you mentioned earlier that you were drawing and then you really like to read, and that's how you got into writing. Who are some of your influences as a writer? What are some authors that you enjoyed reading, either before or still, that have kind of influenced you to become a writer?
That's interesting. So I read a ton of Agatha Christie when I was younger.
Great
and then,
books.
And then I got into, because I grew up watching all the James Bond films, I read all the Ian Fleming stuff. And then read a lot of Tom Clancy at some point. And I don't know if any one of them had a direct influence in the sense that I was trying to mimic them, but I'm sure all of that sort of bled in somewhere at some point.
Who's your go-to? Like, who's your favorite author, just overall, just as a writer that you think is a great writer?
I don't know that I have a favorite. I would say my current favorite right now might be Josiah Bancroft, who writes the Books of Babel series. His latest just came out this month. Is the final book in his series.
Interesting. I haven't heard of that one.
Me neither.
It's a really imaginative, like sort of steampunkish kind of tale where basically the idea is that the Tower of Babel from the biblical stories is, for all intents and purposes, a tourist attraction, and it's like this behemoth giant tower that has a different, like they call them ringdoms, a ringdom at like every level. And this fellow who's like a very much like an Ichabod Crane type of schoolmaster character who's there on his honeymoon with his wife, and he's got his little travel guide, and he thinks, I can't wait to see the tower. I don't know, like I know everything there is to know about it, kind of a thing. And well, before they even get into the tower, she's kidnapped, and so he has to go into the tower to find her, and everything ensues from there. It's a really, really imaginative tale, I think.
Interesting.
That sounds really
good. It's really good. Definitely worth reading.
Yeah.
I have to put that on the list.
So tell us a little bit about, so you said you went through a traditional publisher with the first couple books. Tell us about that process. How did that work for you? Did you like seek them out? How did that happen?
Yeah, that was an interesting process because, like I said, the Camaro Murders was the first book in the Driver series, and that was the first thing I had published. And it's such an unorthodox book that I really didn't have high hopes for it going anywhere. And and really didn't know what I was doing. You know, I queried agents. Generally, you're going to need an agent if you're going to be published with one of the major publishing houses, but there's a lot of independent, smaller publishers. In this case, the one that I ended up with that don't require you to have an agent. And so when you do need an agent, you have to not only sell your book to your agent, and, sell as in like, get them to buy in on it. But then the agent has to turn around and like sell that to a publisher, right? So the publisher I ended up with just did ebooks. They didn't do anything in print. And the fellow, the editor-in-chief, really liked it in the sense that he thought it reminded him of William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, just because of the format of it. Not so much the content, but just the format. So I think it was something that he had read in school and really liked, or something to that effect, and it kind of reminded him and resonated with him in that sense. And so he really liked it and wanted to publish it, and I was kind of floored because he was, I think, the last response that I was waiting on from all the people that I had sent it out to, and he wanted to publish it. So I was like, wow, let's do it. But it was interesting because there weren't a lot of, if any, substantive changes to the manuscript. Obviously, there was copy editing and proofing and that kind of thing, but as unorthodox as it was, I really was expecting a lot more changes, which there weren't.
Well, that's cool. That's refreshing. So
yeah,
the Camaro Murders, that came out before Amazon started doing their publishing thing, right?
I don't know. Originally, the Camaro Murders came out. It was probably 2007-ish. And then
so maybe around the
I re-released it at some point when I got the rights back to it.
Okay. So you did a couple of books with the small publisher, and then you decided to go out on your own. When you went out on your own, was Amazon Publishing the first choice or the only choice, or did you go elsewhere for?
No, there was Amazon was obviously one of the big players, but there was I think they were called Pronoun. They don't exist anymore, but there was a startup that was backed by one of the major publishing houses. I don't remember which, that allowed you to have one platform that would publish to all the other vendors. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and a whole slew of others. And I was with them for a short period of time, and then they closed up shop for whatever reason. And at that point, I went with Amazon, and then for everybody else, I go through a site called Draft to Digital for just the ebook stuff.
You mean to go to like Kobo and the other
Barnes & Noble, and
the Nook, right? That's Barnes & Noble.
I would say at this point, I've only got maybe half, if less than half, my catalog on those other sites. The driver stuff and the Reeve stuff are all on Amazon only, because it's all set up through the Kindle Unlimited program, which you have to be exclusive with Amazon to do that.
I gotcha. And so I've always wondered how that works, the Kindle Unlimited. Because I have that. I have Kindle. I read lots of different stuff through that. So if I was to grab one of your books that's on there, like, how do you see any benefit from that? Or does it take, like,
if at all,
1,000 of me to do it before that happens?
I mean, you get paid per page read. So if you read 30 pages of the book, but not the whole book, I get paid for 30 of those pages. But it's like,
oh, that's interesting.
It's probably like a fraction of a penny. It's such a low amount. You need to be, somebody who's really widely read to make anything at it. But I put it out there mainly as a, because I'm at the point where I'm trying to gain readers more so than make money.
Sure.
And so I thought that would be a way to entice new readers, is that, hey, you can read it for free if you have a subscription.
That's neat.
Sure.
And
so that's what.
Sorry,
I don't know what Kindle Unlimited is.
It's like a subscription.
It's a subscription service.
So it's like, I forget what it is. I think it's like $10.
Yeah, it's probably about $10.
And then there are certain titles in Amazon's entire, all the books that they sell. Some of them are part of this Kindle Unlimited. So it's almost like Netflix. Like you can go and read, or the library, but you pay $10 a month for it.
Or it's like you pay Spotify a subscription to listen to the music that's in their catalog. You don't necessarily own it, but you have access to all these. So with Kindle Unlimited, you have access to all their ebooks, and you can read them at
well, not all of them, just the ones that are part of. That's the distinction I want to make sure people understand.
Yeah, you're right.
Because if it was, that'd be fantastic. Like I would read,
but
every book that is Amazon sells is in there. That'd be great. But no, it's specific ones. But I have found some really good stuff through that, and like found a couple of new authors that way. So I think it's a smart, like you said, if you're gonna wanting to kind of grow your readership, to offer it through Kindle Unlimited is a way to kind of get in front of some of the authors or some of the readers. It worked in my case. I ended up buying, going back and buying some books from people that I read through there. So,
nice.
So is it like Audible? Is that what it?
Well, Audible is just is the same thing, but audiobooks.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's like the same thing, right?
Yeah, but
like
these are the actual books you read on Kindle. They're not.
These are ebooks.
Yeah, ebooks,
audiobooks,
and then Audible is the audiobook version. Yeah. Essentially, that's about the same thing. I also have Audible.
So Leah, it's sort of like Audible. It's sort of like Audible.
Okay, then
only you have to read it yourself.
Except with books.
I know. I just trying to figure out
electronic books, not real books, but electronic books.
Oh man,
you read to yourself.
I know. I know what Audible.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah,
I just
Kindle
wanted to make
Unlimited
sure it's like similar, the same concept. That's what I meant. Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool, and you can tell when you go to Amazon, you can tell before you go to buy something. Oh, this one's on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm going to read it there first and see what I think, and then if decide if you wanted to. And I've started some Kindle Unlimited books, and they probably only got paid for the first 30 pages because I was nope.
They got their quarter pay.
That's the thing is that they're in the self.
What you're going to get sometimes.
Yeah, the self-publishing game is it makes it really easy for anybody to publish a book, which means that I'm sure the quality varies greatly across all those titles. In mine, who knows where it's at in that range, but. It's cool that you can so easily publish something, but there's a trade-off for that. So you have to wade through.
I've read some stuff that's not. I was just like, did anyone proofread this even a little? Like, I'm just, you know what I mean? I'm not like a grammar Nazi or a punctuation Nazi, but I mean, I know what it's supposed to look like. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, this is.
This is fan fiction from Reddit. How did this get published?
And that's you're not wrong. Some of the stuff is like that, and it's just like, just give it a once over. I mean, you know what I mean, before you just throw it up there. I guess I don't know some of the stuff, but I will say that oftentimes what attracts me to a book on Kindle Unlimited is the cover. So, like seeing the artwork that you've chosen, like that would be a book that I would be like, oh, I want to read that. I'm gonna get that because. That you don't always know from the reviews or from the description that this is going to be garbage. But I'm like, if they paid, if they obviously went out of their way to like get a really nice cover, you know what I mean? Then they're very serious about what they're trying to publish. You know,
it could just be prettily wrapped garbage too. But,
that's true. But I'm just
saying they're making an effort.
Oh yeah,
that's a fair point.
That's 100% what I'm saying. I feel like they made the effort to try to attract my attention. So they got it. Let's see what they have. But yeah, it's not even that is not an indicator of.
So what you're saying, Jeff, is if the cover has Bruce Willis on it and says Jeff, read me, you're going to go ahead and just like click. Right?
I would, yeah.
It would be made for him at that point.
I would watch any movie that Bruce. I mean, if you sat and read the phone book, I'd probably watch that movie because at some point someone would try to. Well, somebody would try to kill him at some point, and then he would crack wise.
It's just his luck,
that's
right?
all I need, right?
That's all you need. And maybe he'll
especially this time of year.
Well, right. He'll just all of a sudden go into song and sing something.
So you can leave comments or not? You can leave reviews on this Kindle Unlimited.
Oh yeah, it's just like reviewing anything else on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, out of 5 stars and type stuff up.
That's another thing that's really hard to get is reviews, because there's so many people that are like, oh, I don't leave reviews for things, and I don't know if that's a polite way of saying I didn't like your book, or they legitimately just aren't a review person. And I get that, because I don't leave a review unless I really 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 like something.
Right.
So
or you really 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 hate something.
well,
Because
that
that's what
too.
it seems like,
Yeah.
especially on Amazon.
There's no middle
People
ground.
are the ones that hate
Right.
it. So
And so it's like trying to get people to leave you a review is sometimes difficult, but it is very much appreciated when they do. Even if it's not a positive review, any feedback is good.
Okay, mental note: leave review for Ian's books.
right.
He's made a lot of mental notes on these. Have you carried through with any of
Actually,
them?
I will fully admit I've forgotten, and I have not reviewed the promptly written podcast books yet. Volumes 1. Well, I haven't gotten volume
You
2
reviewed
yet.
one of them, I thought.
I may have reviewed one, and I still haven't read all of volume 2 because I haven't gotten my copy from Matt yet. But I'm working on it.
Okay. Well, I'm waiting on Matt to give me the manuscripts for volume 3 so we can actually publish it.
I know I'm excited because I this is like a book series I just want to get, because all your stories on your podcasts are fantastic. Especially, I'm always impressed at what you guys can pull out of a simple prompt. It's really, really fantastic. You guys are wonderful.
I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah, I love listening to it.
And just to clarify, because this is great, because that helps me segue into a question I wanted to ask you. Just to clarify for our listening audience, so Promptly Written is a podcast where Ian and Matt get a prompt from the fans, the people who listen to the podcast. Some of my prompts have been on there. Actually, the last two, I think, were mine.
I think that's right.
Utah has got a few
couple
prompts in there. Yeah. And so they take this random prompt. It could be just a phrase, a cliche, some wording, and they each approach it in their particular, writing style, and then they read it on and then discuss kind of the thought process. And that it's a great show. It really is really, really good. And so my question for you is, as a novel writer, do you find that this podcast, this exercise of once a month, just kind of having to like fly by the seat of your pants and come up with something with these, you get like a 30-day, you're just like, bam, I got to get this idea based on this prompt. Is that an exercise that helps you as a writer, do you think?
I think it definitely does. Yeah. It's a lot of fun because, one, you get to explore those like half-formed ideas that never grew into anything that was going to be, that would ever see the light of day. I've got like a whole notebook full of random half-formed thoughts that just never came to anything. And so in that sense, it's fun, but I think it also forces you to be creative with the novel, especially being independent, self-published kind of thing. There's no deadline other than what I set for myself. And so with the podcast, I'm due every month. I have to have the story done. And because I'm writing other things at the same time, I'm a little selfish of my writing time. And so I don't want the podcast to consume all of it. So to have the deadline to produce something that is hopefully entertaining in that short amount of time I think is a good thing for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely go out there and subscribe to that one today, because it's really fun.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Even not just the story. So when they talk about watches and pens too, that's also entertaining.
Yeah, we have our own little version of banter, and I wonder, how many people do we lose versus gain? Before we actually get to the stories, but
you can skip ahead. That's what
usually about the half-hour mark is when we start veering into story territory. So
the great thing about podcast players is that you can listen to them in like 2 times speed or 3 times speed. You should hear you and Matt going through your banter in 3 times speed, because that's what. No, I'm kidding. But I wonder what our show sounds like in 3 times speed.
It's Alvin and the Chipmunks talking about watches.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a good show. Just check that out. I was getting ready. I had another question, and then I distracted myself when I started making the joke. And now I don't remember the question.
That never happens.
Well, yeah,
just like technical difficulties.
Well, here,
right?
I'll
my brain often has technical difficulties.
What's up with that?
It wouldn't be a World Gone Geek show if there weren't technical difficulties. That's right.
Right. Aaliyah, what are your thoughts on that, Aaliyah?
What's up with
I
that?
don't know why Utah always wants me to play that one after.
Like what do you mean?
They
What
were
do you
never
mean?
intended to be like a duo. That those two quotes, like they're completely unrelated to each other. But that's all right.
I love that. I love that so much. Now, here it goes.
Somehow,
This is
to him, they
total
make
non
sense.
sequitur, but I found this just for you, Ian, because I got this as a gift years ago.
Nice.
So this, I guess, is a limited edition.
Out of 10,000.
Fossil. It's a fossil watch. Yeah, out of 10,000, Leah. How'd you know?
I used to have some fossils back in the day.
Right? And so this is the only fossil I have left. But you can see here.
Oh, there you go.
And boop.
Wow, that's cool. Can it
It's
also
hard to-
shoot lasers out of it? So just you forget that we're on a podcast also, and so that's a James Bond fossil watch that he has
it's
just
a
shown.
James Bond.
Yeah.
We'll take a picture and put it in the show notes or something.
But does it? Yeah, but does it shoot a laser? Like, can you get out of like
no? Sadly,
handcuffs with it or anything?
There's no little wire you can choke people with or laser that shoots out of it, or it's not magnetic. It came with a belt, but the belt didn't have any C4 in it either. I was very disappointed. So, yeah, I mean, come on. If you're gonna put this logo on something, it's got to be gadget something, right?
Yeah,
so
that didn't pass through Q's
right.
Quality
Maybe just
control.
a prototype.
That's right.
Oh, it could be. It's just a prototype.
So let's talk about that then, real quick. James Bond, since you brought it up, Utah, that's great. You said that you read the books when you were. So was that your introduction to James Bond, or had you seen some movies first? Like, how did you get into those? Because I've read a couple of the books too, but it was well after I'd seen the movies.
Yeah, I had seen the movies first, and it was one of those things where like my mother hated James Bond, kind of a thing, because he's like a womanizer and whatnot. But somehow,
he's such a misogynist.
right? Somehow I was able to watch the movies as a kid. Despite that, they were probably on TBS or something. But
right.
But I was familiar with the movies first, and then went back and read the books because I just wanted to understand the source material, I guess. So
yeah, and the books. I mean, you talk about James Bond being a womanizer and a misogynist. Some of the books are even more problematic than the movies.
Yeah, I guess
a product of their time.
I mean, they're product of their time. I guess he's definitely a womanizer. I don't know if I'd say he's a misogynist, because I don't think he hates women, but he definitely. I think the books he's a little bit more nuanced than he is in the movies. The movies he's a little bit more. I'm not sure the right term. He's sexed up a little bit more, maybe in the movies, in the sense that
that's true.
That makes sense. Yeah.
He's a little bit more human in the books, maybe. But they are definitely a product of their time. They're written in the 50s, I think, post World War II kind of a thing. But I always enjoyed, not that Ian Fleming's a brilliant writer or anything, but he always was very descriptive with his the way he sets a scene and sort of describes things, and almost like a product placement kind of a thing. But I think what I always latched onto was his descriptiveness as far as laying things out. And that was always interesting to me from a writing perspective.
And have you seen? There was a TV show that was kind of based on his exploits because he was actually a spy, wasn't he? He was like actually involved.
He was involved in intelligence, I believe,
Yeah.
a little bit in the war, and people speculate on, I think, how much of that influenced his stories, and they even try to speculate who of his acquaintances he based the character of Bond on, and that kind of thing. I think he's sort of an amalgam of like some people he knew in the war, and some of the British sort of not folk heroes, but like some of the early 1900s sort of British heroes that I'm not familiar with their names, but there was a lot of these characters, I think, that were sort of influential to him in that sense, and it was sort of a hodgepodge of that idea. I think Britain was in decline as far as a world power at the end of the war, and I think some people speculate that it was sort of his sort of take on, like, hey, what if Britain was still relevant, kind of a thing on the world stage, like they were, and that's sort of his personification of it, maybe. I've not read enough about it to be
Sure.
to be knowledgeable about it, but that's what I've read anyway.
Yeah. I was surprised at some of the, I mean, again, not surprised because again, they were written at a time where people said things that you would never say today.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just some of the kind of racial comments and things like that. I forget the one that I read.
If you read Live and Let Die, you'd probably find some stuff in there that you won't like.
That that was the one.
Yeah.
And
So is that
then
the one that the
maybe
movie had
Goldfinger as
Yaphet
well.
Kotto in it?
Yaphet Kotto was in Live and Let
He
Die,
was
the
in
film.
Live-
yes.
Live and Let
So
Die.
that's
He
the
recently
book.
passed, actually. He passed last year.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
he
I
did.
saw that. He was a
Yeah.
brilliant actor. But yeah, I that's the one because I remember as I'm reading it, like I'd seen that movie and he was in my head as the character. Yeah, that one is problematic in some of the writing. But again, it's just like, okay, it's one of those things. It's like, how many times can we, say it, well, it was a different time.
Well, what's going to be really interesting is 100 years from now, what people are
Right.
going to complain about us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
It'll be
that's,
interesting.
Sure.
that's going to be
Yeah.
the fun question.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. They're going to say that Daniel Craig is just totally wrong for Bond. Oh, wait. We don't have to wait 100 years for that. That already
Let me
Some
ask-
people are saying that already, but
You're right.
Let me ask you this then. So do you have a favorite Bond in the movies? Is there a favorite
I
Bond?
think I'm a
actor?
Connery guy. Yeah.
Sean Connery.
My
he is.
theory is your Bond is the one that you saw first.
Yeah, it's kind of
Right.
like your doctor in the Doctor Who series.
So that's interesting because my earliest Bond memories are with Roger Moore. But I think I'm a
Same.
Connery guy. Yeah.
Same.
Interesting.
I've heard people say what you're saying, Utah, but at the same time, yeah, the very first Bond film I saw in the theater was Roger Moore. But yet I remember watching some Sean Connery ones on TV. And I knew that my mom liked Sean Connery. She likes all of them. She thinks they're all, and I'm like, Mom, I don't, at that age, I'm
Even
like, gross. I don't know. I don't care. I don't know what you.
Is this a kissing movie?
Yeah, I don't want to. That's exactly right. And it turns
Oh,
out
if it was black and white,
they're
Mom, I'm
very
turning
much.
this off.
There you go.
That was my thing. Like if you're watching a black and white movie, I can't do it.
Yeah, but yeah, Sean Connery was my favorite. But I think a lot of that's just because I just love him and everything else too.
Yeah,
Even when he plays Scottish accent Spaniards and Russians.
Or when he's Stardust.
Oh my gosh, that
God.
movie.
Well, we won't go there.
That's a whole other podcast worth of discussion, I think, is what that
sure is. I wonder if I wonder if that movie should appear in our We're Going Back podcast.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how I'd make it fit the story that I have going on.
I will say Sean Connery wears a diaper pretty well.
So
a mankini.
Aaliyah, we may have lost you.
Yeah, whatever that was. Yeah.
I've only seen one James Bond movie, and that's Goldfinger. And
that's not a bad.
I don't know anything about.
It's a very iconic one, but I think it's a tad overrated myself.
Well, I want you to Google Zardoz right now, Ali.
You should watch Zardoz. It's an experience.
Zardoz, and then do an image search.
Zardoz.
Yeah, and give it a little bit of time because it starts off really slow.
Zardoz.
D is in dog. OZ.
Not very many movies can start with like a floating face basically giving you exposition for however long it took.
I've never seen
Zardoz does it.
I'm going to admit. So
you're missing out.
What is it?
Do you see Sean Connery's outfit?
It's so bizarre.
What is happening?
It is. It is
so bad. It's good almost, but then you're like, "What did I just watch?" And I'm like, "I feel like I need to watch it again." I don't. It's bizarre.
I don't know if he's wearing a diaper or if he's wearing. What is this?
Whoever wrote the dialogue for this film,
a
I'm
diaper
like,
with like suspenders.
The story,
like a bullet.
The story
strap.
itself is a little.
And why is he in the snow?
It was a very, very odd film. I think those are the lengths that he was trying to go to separate himself from Bond, from being typecast in that role.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Which is kind of interesting.
That would have been quite a knee-jerk reaction to go to Zardoz.
Yeah, it's way different. So yeah, I think Connery. Although I really do like Daniel Craig, I'm sorry to see him go.
Honestly, I like them all, but Brosnan. I'm just not a Brosnan guy.
Really? Yeah. See, no, I liked him in Remington Steele back in the day. And so when he became Bond, I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. But I think it was just that time period. It's like, well, it just made sense that he was
Yeah.
Bond.
Sure, and
So who?
I definitely don't think he was helped with the writing of the movies that he was in.
I would
Yeah,
agree.
I'm a
they
big
were a
Timothy
little.
Dalton fan. I thought
Oh
his
yeah.
movies are highly underrated.
Yes, I agree.
Nobody's mentioned George Lazenby yet.
There's
I
a reason for
love
that. No, I'm just kidding.
I love On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
That's
It's
what.
it's a
So
it's a peculiar film, but I love it.
I haven't
It's
seen
one of the
that one
best Bond
in
stories in the
ages.
series, in my opinion.
That's what everybody says. It's like he's not anybody's favorite Bond, but he
But it's a
made one
great,
Bond movie that's like one of the best Bond
Right.
films, which is kind of interesting.
yeah,
So who do you think's going to be Bond next?
I don't know. People are saying
Harry Styles.
they really want Henry
Oh,
Henry Cavill. They want him really bad, which I don't mind Henry Cavill, but I don't want him as Bond. I don't think he'd be right for
He's
it.
almost too big.
He's
He's
too
like,
big of a
muscular.
name and too muscular.
He's too big
I
of a
feel like
name. Right.
yeah,
So
I feel
I
like they need to
really
find somebody more obscure.
right, yeah, somebody who's less known. I would say that if I could pick anybody, maybe 10 years younger would be Michael Fassbender. I think he would have been great, but I think he's too old now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought Clive Owen would be a good one, but he's also too old now.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
another one of those ones that like people are like, oh, if I could have him like, a couple decades back or something, 10 years ago, maybe he'd be good. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Well, I mean, everybody's, the talk is Idris Elba and all this kind of stuff. And to be honest,
People like him too.
I
He's,
would
I think,
watch him
past
in
his
anything.
prime.
So, oh no.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
think-
for
I think
for
Idris
Bond,
Elba-
they
so
think he
Idris
might be good
Elba
as M.
is-
People think he might be a good M.
Oh, yeah, that would be true. But
I hadn't thought
he's
of that.
almost he's my British Bruce Willis.
Well, the thing is, you need
I'll
somebody who
watch
can
him in
do
anything,
like
and
another
he
4 or
could do no
5
wrong.
films, right?
Right.
So you
we're
want somebody
talking
that's
at
got
least
some
10 years.
longevity in
agreed.
him.
That's
Yeah.
that's for sure.
So
Yeah,
you're
that's
looking for
true.
somebody a little bit younger, because wasn't Craig the oldest when he was cast,
I don't remember.
or was that?
He might have been one of the youngest when he was cast. Actually, I think he was
Oh,
around
wait.
38, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I take that back. Lazenby was like 29, maybe.
Yeah, I know Lazenby was pretty young.
I think Craig was like 38, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, we just don't want
follow
to see like a 70-year-old trying to do these things like Roger
Right.
Moore did.
Yeah, Roger Moore hung on for 1 or 2 films too long, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
You're saying that to a guy who is so ready to go see another Indiana Jones movie. All right, I don't
man,
care how old he is.
Call me skeptical. I love Indiana Jones, but like I don't know. Like it's like, do we need another Rambo kind of a thing? I don't know.
Do we?
Do we need
yes,
another Rocky?
We always.
It's a legitimate question.
There is another Rocky coming, but
There is.
Well, no, I think they're doing more Creed, is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay,
Rocky
got it.
is in
All right.
Creed.
See, Creed is okay, but another
Yeah,
Rocky?
I love that. I love this continuation, this revival. This is the way I love to see movies live on. I don't like them to go.
Kind of
Let's go
passing
back
the
and remake
baton.
Rocky with some, up and coming,
Sure.
tough guy. No, Rocky's already. That's great. We loved it. Some were great, some were cheese, but they were all, what they were. And then you come along and you do Creed, and it's like, okay, we're passing the torch, and now
That
we can
makes
have
more
Creed,
sense.
and eventually Creed can pass that torch on to someone else. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, who plays Creed? Michael B. Jordan, right?
Yeah.
When he's
They can
older,
pass it on to a Drago.
right? Oh my gosh! Well, he's going to be in this next one, or he was.
I
in the one.
know.
I haven't seen the second one, but that wasn't the Drago one, was it?
No, that wasn't the Drago one, no.
Okay, yeah, I gotta see
Not
that.
that
But
I heard.
anyway, so yeah, I love that kind of stuff. So I'm hoping that continues, that trend continues. So last thing I'm going to ask. So in the Driver series, since that's one of your oldest series, you've been living with that the longest. It's got one book left. Is that right?
That's the plan anyway. Yeah.
If they made it into a movie, who plays the driver? Like right now, like who? So we can get an idea who you picture in your head.
Oh man.
What he looks like.
So the one person that was close in my head, and unfortunately I don't know the actor's name. He's one of these guys that's probably been in a lot of stuff, and I just never knew his name. I know that's a terrible answer, but I sort of had a guy in mind.
It's the mayhem guy from the insurance commercials, right?
So you know what he was, and I'm not claiming to have watched this film or any of them. I'm going to put that on record. I saw like 10 minutes of it on TV, but I think he played the dad in one of the Twilight movies.
Oh, Google.
Oh,
Okay.
Bella's dad.
Yeah, so that guy, like, whatever I saw him in first, I was like, maybe he could be a good driver. I don't know.
William Albert Burke.
He just has sort of a tortured look about him. I thought maybe that would fit the character, but
interesting.
All right.
So,
or he could have a tortured look about him, rather.
Sure. All right. Well, Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find more information about your books, your and all the stuff that you're working on? Where can they get more info?
If you just go to ianlewisfiction.com, that's my website. That has a link to all the books. And from there, there's links to Goodreads and Facebook and Instagram, which I use in varying degrees. But yeah, ianlewisfiction.com is probably the best place.
Awesome. And so, and some of the, which is the driver series on Kindle Unlimited?
It is, yes.
So we can get a taste of it there if you want to get a taste. But then if you like it, obviously don't keep reading it on Kindle Unlimited because he only gets like a few cents.
Oh, I don't really care. I just care that you're reading and preferably leaving a review.
There you go, the review. Let's do that. Let's make sure
at least review the 30 pages you read.
Yeah,
that would be great.
It's been great, man. I can't wait to have you and Matt back on when we talk about kind of doing a little collaboration. And I can't wait to see what the three of us write in that. And then,
I'm excited.
We're also going to we're also reading a book together, and we're going to like talk about the book.
That's right.
I forget which show we're doing which on, but we're planning collaboration with those guys. And it's going to be fun. So keep an eye out and listen for that, an ear out. Before we go, though, it's time for the
90-second Geek Rant.
I got to stop saying it's time for right before I press the sound that says it's time for.
That's like saying ATM machine or PIN number.
Exactly. So, so 90-second Geek Rant is the time when we give you the listening audience a chance to speak out. And let us know what's on your mind. You get we give you a part of the show to hear what you're talking about. Good friend of the show is our geek of the week, I guess we'll call him. I gotta get Deep Voice Guy to say that now. It's time for Geek of the Week with the 90-second Geek Rant. There we go. But no, this is Tommy D from our good friends over at Circle of Nerds called in to our speak pipe, and
you better not be talking about Buford.
Tommy D from Circle of Nerds here with my thoughts on the live-action Cowboy Bebop series. The series does a nice job creating a fresh retelling of the story while offering enough nostalgic fan service for those of us who have loved the anime since 1998. The world of Cowboy Bebop has always had a very cool Firefly meets Fifth Element vibe, and the live-action nails that. However, the live-action series does feel a little dry on story and character development. The relationship between Spike and Jet feels forced, despite the writers sprinkling in a few personal tidbits to flesh them out. The visuals and soundtrack are absolutely amazing. The acting is solid, except for Vicious. And I actually like the live-action Faye more than her anime counterpart. She's definitely a high point of the series. It's also nice to see that they haven't overly sexualized her like they did in the anime. So for now, at only 7 episodes in, I'm just not emotionally invested enough to binge it. But from what I've seen so far, the series does a fine job recreating the beloved anime, and in no way does it ruin the franchise. It's a fun ride for new cowboys and seasoned veterans of the series. Just don't expect a lot of emotional pull. At least not yet. I guess we'll see what happens. See you, Space Cowboy.
Nice.
Tommy D there with his...
I haven't watched it yet.
Awesome. You haven't watched any of them, Elliot?
No. And the reason
she knows
is
the anime, right?
Yeah,
I do know the anime, but I just have been waiting to watch the series because I'm so afraid that it's going to be horrible. In my own opinion.
That's exactly what Tommy kept saying before. because I asked him several times as it was coming up, and he was really nervous. So I'm really encouraged to hear him say that, because I know how much he loves the show. We've watched 2 episodes. Turns out my wife actually kind of likes it, so now I have to wait for her to watch it. So otherwise, I would already have binged every episode by now. It would have been gone. But so we're doing them in order, and it's really, I agree with him so far. I'm really enjoying what they're doing with it. It's a nice homage to the series. It's not so exactly like it that it's a mimic. It's not so different that it's like, oh God, what is this? Like some others have been. It's this weird kind of in between thing. It's not 100% perfect, but it's also definitely still worth seeing. I enjoy it a lot so far.
Yeah, I
that's only 2
everything.
episodes for me.
I think I'm 5 or 6 episodes in, and I agree with everything that Tommy said. It's not exact. It's a wonderful homage, a nice tribute to the anime. It's certainly flawed. There are some issues in the writing and the character development. And I think the biggest thing for me is I don't feel as emotionally invested or attached to it. And Tommy mentioned that too. And it's certainly very possible that a lot of it is nostalgia, going back to when I first discovered anime and first discovered Cowboy Bebop. Admitted, Cowboy Bebop just reinforced my love for really good jazz music. And
that's that sound, man, the soundtrack is worth every minute.
One of the greatest things that they did for the live action show was to bring back Yoko Kanno to do the soundtrack for the live action show, because I mean, half of my love for the show is the music. It's
one of those shows. I always like, one of the things I like to throw out on the internet occasionally and Twitter and things is to quiz people about what's the one show you can't skip intro on. Like you just
Cowboy
have to
Bebop.
watch the intro.
Absolutely.
And Cowboy Bebop's one of them. The Muppet Show is another one that I would say.
I feel
have
that
to watch
same way
the
about
opening for that.
I feel the same way about Shampoo though. I love the intro.
And you guys called me out. I haven't seen that yet, so I'm definitely going to have to start watching that. And my wife probably doesn't care about that one, so I can start binging that right away. So I'll do that. All right. Ian, thank you again for being on the show. We appreciate it. Make sure you check out his books at ianlewisfiction.com. He's also on Instagram and Twitter, I think, right? We could follow you there.
Not Twitter. I'm on Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. That's where I've seen you on Instagram. Yeah. That's what it is. But while you're there on Instagram following Ian, make sure you follow us too. We're trying to get lots of followers, and we'd love for you to be one of them. That's where we put out a lot of information about our guests. Next week, DC, the Brain Supreme from Tag Team, going to be right here on the show.
There it is.
To a previous episode, and he was able to rebook, and we're hoping to see him here next Sunday. So make sure to join us, and we'll see you. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.